What does it mean to exist? Are we defined by our own consciousness, or does our existence have to be satisfied by the observation of another conscious being? We can think that we are still present in reality, but without another to verify our presence, we cannot truly exist. People disappear all the time. Much like the Panama disappearances which I have covered in a previous video, we will be taking a look at another case that stumped the world for quite some time. This is the disappearance of Lars Mittank. Lars was born on February 9th, 1986 in Berlin, Germany. Not much is known about his early years, but he is described by his friends and family as passive and reserved. He worked as an operator at a coal-fired power plant located in Wilhelmshaven, 150 miles away from his hometown, Marne. Growing up, he was a soccer enthusiast and was passionate about the soccer club called Werder Bremen. During his time off work, he would often go back to his home to visit his parents. His father became unable to provide for the family after suffering a stroke in 2012, so Lars had to step in to take some of his responsibility. This did take a toll on Lars's mental health, as stress and pressure were mounted upon him. Our story starts when Lars and 5 of his friends partook a trip to Varna, Bulgaria, for vacation on June 30th, 2014, for the holidays. They stayed at the 4-star Golden Sands Resort, located just on the outskirts of Varna, a city bordering the Black Sea. This trip was organized by Lars's friends, which was something he was not used to, as normally he would be the one to organize vacations. Perhaps due to how little he was informed of the trip, he did not tell his mother, Sandra Mittank, any details of this vacation, which was out of character, as he was often in contact with his mother. During the stay in Varna, Lars often played soccer with the high school graduates, who described him as a likable and sociable guy. At this time, the World Cup was in session, so there was a lot to talk about with the local soccer enthusiasts. His friends also noticed that Lars wasn't eating a lot, which his loss of appetite could have been contributed from the weather, which at its peak reached around 40 degrees Celsius at noon. On July 3rd, Lars and his friends decided to head down to the local bar to watch the quarterfinal soccer match between Costa Rica and the Netherlands. The game started at 11 p.m. and everyone in the bar was transfixed by this match. There were a group of high school graduates who did not like how the ball was played and began to grow aggravated. They were fans of Bayern Munich, an opposition in the eyes of anyone who were fans of a different team. You can understand how crazy some people get on the topic of soccer. Perhaps it was due to Lars wearing a jersey which represented a different team. The graduates began trash-talking Lars, which ended in a heated argument. This was very unlike Lars's personality, but I assumed he did not like his club getting trashed on, so he talked back towards the high school graduates. The argument eventually died down and Lars and his friends decided to leave the bar at around 4 a.m. to head back to the hotel. On their way, Lars's friends decided to have a quick visit to the McDonald's nearby. Lars stuck to a healthy diet, so he decided to walk back alone. The hotel was only located 1 kilometer away from where they were, but along the way, he was jumped by a group of people who were assumed to be hired by the group at the bar. He was beaten and received a blow to the left side of his head, which resulted in a ruptured eardrum and some minor jaw damage. Lars laid on the ground and then was later found and taken back to the hotel by his friends. Upon waking up at around noon, Lars called his girlfriend to inform her of his incident. She told Lars to see a doctor, but he dismissed the idea because he thought that the doctors weren't open during the weekends. He figured that his injury was no big deal, and in the next few days before the vacation ended, he went out to party with his friends. The ticket back to Berlin was scheduled on July 7th, but Lars decided that he should get himself checked out before his travel. Lars still suffered from pain due to his ear, and decided to go to a practitioner for a checkup. His friends checked out of the hotel on the 7th while Lars was undergoing a routine checkup. The The doctor decided that Lars was in no condition to travel and referred him to St. Anna's Hospital. Lars then met up with his other friends to communicate his thoughts. Lars strictly insisted that the rest go without him. He had travel insurance, so it seemed like there was no issue for him staying for a few days. His friends reluctantly left him behind, as it does seem like the best course of actions from an individual and financial standpoint. Lars said goodbye to his friends and took a cab to reach his next destination. At 8 p.m., Lars arrived at the hospital. He waited for 40 minutes and was eventually seen by an EMT specialist. Unfortunately, there was a language barrier, and the specialist refused to communicate with Lars in English, even mocking and laughing at him at times. Lars was not admitted to the hospital and was only given a prescription of Cesfil 500, a common antibiotic to fight off the infection in his ear. He walked out of the hospital at 9:40 p.m. and got on the same cab that gotten him there in the first place. What was intriguing was that the cab driver seemingly knew that Lars was not going to be admitted to the hospital. They drove to a pharmacy nearby but was not able to acquire the correct amount of tablets, so they had to go to a second one. At 10:05 p.m., Lars requested to be driven to a cheap hotel. He arrived 5 minutes later. He checked in the hotel with his credit card and reported to his mother that the guy in front of the counter copied its information. He arrived in his room and took the first dose of the prescription. He called his mother at 11 p.m. to request some money to be charged into his phone card. He was using an old flip phone at the time, opting to leave his smartphone behind at home to enjoy his vacation. This is why sometimes he was not able to be reached as his phone quickly runs out of battery. He then asked her to call foreign health insurance so that he could be brought back home with a patient passport. Sandra called the health insurance company and called Lars back, informing him that the company knows of his current situation and is figuring out a way to bring him home. This time, Lars seemed to be more nervous, stating that this hotel was giving him the creeps. The action by the front desk caused him to think twice. He was afraid that his credit card details will be used for malicious purposes and decided to lock his credit cards until he arrived back home. Sandra also helped Lars book a bus to the airport from the hotel on the next day. The phone call ended, but Lars called again, stating that there was something wrong with the hotel. He told his mother that he needed to get out of the hotel no matter what. He became paranoid and afraid of his surroundings. There were also reports of the CCTV camera from the hotel capturing his strange behaviors as he looked out of the window and was hiding in an elevator, but these footage cannot be found online. He left the hotel between 2:30 to 3:30 a.m., telling his mother that he needed to hide away from 4 men that was looking for him. Later during the night, Lars sent messages to his mother asking about what the prescription drugs did. Sandra responded to his text but didn't end up calling him because she assumed that he was hiding from some people. She booked him a flight which left Varna at 4:20 p.m. on the next day. Lars was seen by a cab driver at 5 a.m., which he picked him up and dropped him off at the airport. He was reported to have dilated pupils by the cab driver. Lars reported to his mother of his arrival at the airport and asked her to transfer money through Western Union. At that point, it was the first time either of them have heard of such a thing. Lars's understanding only came from another individual at the airport, but he needed cash fast, and the information was enough for both of them to work out how to use the service. Sandra sent Lars 500 euros and told him to go to the airport doctor to check up on if he could fly or not. It seems as though Lars was certain that he wasn't able to be allowed on the flight, as he was heard muttering the words, "They won't let me fly, nor drive." Lars then went to clean up in the washroom. Sandra tried to contact Lars multiple times, but perhaps due to the phone running out of battery or other factors, he stopped answering. At 9 a.m., Lars at this time was being examined by Dr. Kostow. His results came back normal, and Lars was given a clearance on him boarding the flight. Lars signed a waiver beforehand, and upon signing the document, Lars made an excuse to use the washroom. He took this opportunity to dash out the airport and scale over a fence, never to be seen again. His last appearance was captured on 9:45 a.m. on the CCTV that surrounded the airport. He left his luggage, identifications, and cell phone behind. At 11 a.m., Sandra made a phone call to the honorary consulate of Varna, an organization to look after foreign travelers in the given country, and spoke with Mrs. Mitrova to seek help in making sure her son was alright. Mrs. Mitrova contacted the airport, which then called back to Sandra, informing her that Lars had seen the doctor and was able to board the flight without issues. However, Lars decided to run into the airport without his belongings and hasn't returned since. On July 9th, a missing persons case was filed under Lars Mittank in Germany. A private detective was hired by the power plant company that Lars worked at to investigate the situation. At the same time, an employee of the power plant was vacationing in Bulgaria, and upon hearing of Lars' disappearance, traveled to the airport to get information on the matter. He arrived at the hospital on July 10th, but was given the cold shoulder by the employees. On July 24th, Sandra arrived at Varna to look for her lost son. On July 27th, Sandra, the private investigator, and Lars' co-worker came together and arrived at the airport in hoping of receiving some useful information to this case. They were shown the security recording, and Sandra seemed to be relieved as to her. Lars' actions seemed to have motives, and she knew that her son understood what he was doing. He was getting away from danger. She also asked if she could see the video of Lars arriving at the airport, but was denied. Was the full-length clip of what was seen after Lars ran out of the... It was also noted what the airport showed Sandra was the full-length clip of what happened after Lars came out of the examiner's office, while what was released to the public was a shortened-down version. In the version that was shown to Sandra, Lars seemed coherent and articulate, and there were cut-out parts which showed him avoiding the police. There were also many video recordings that were said to be missing, such as Lars going to the bathroom and entering the examiner's office. For some reason, these video files were nowhere to be found. Lars' belongings were given back to Sandra. It was listed by the airport examiners that Lars took 3 pills of Sesvil 500, but the pills were nowhere to be found within the luggage. Alongside everything that Lars took on the trip, he also put the receipt of his spendings in a little plastic bag. So there was no denying that he was in possession of the antibiotics. Upon asking for the rest of the pills, the airport staff dismissed her advances and suggested her to stop looking for her son altogether. This action was very strange and simply fueled her desire to find her son again. Why were there people wanting the investigation of Lars to be halted? The statement given by the doctor who had examined Lars gave multiple different accounts as to what happened that day. After the original statement given to Sandra, the story was changed to that an employee of the airline which Lars was supposed to board came in the room to find Lars. Upon seeing him, Lars quickly ran out of the airport. But the questions were raised as to why an employee was there to see Lars even though the flight was leaving at 4:20 p.m. and it made no sense that he arrived so early. The story was then changed so that a person who came in was an employee of the airport, but it also raises the question of why a person like that can even enter the doctor's office in the first place. Afterwards, the identity of the employee was changed to someone who was unknown. Further investigation by the private detective yielded no such person was found, which entered the doctor's office at that time. Coincidentally, the doctor's office was caught in a blind spot from the security cameras, and so no useful information could be found. The injury on Lars's head may have caused some swelling in the left side of his brain. This part of the brain is mainly used for auditory information and encoding memory. With heavy damage to this part of the brain, it can be assumed that there will also be related issues. Amnesia, short, and long-term memory loss can all result from this area being affected. If the damage on Lars's head was great enough, he could be suffering from these conditions, which might explain his erratic behavior. The prescription drugs which Lars took is an antibiotic called Sesvil 500 that is used to treat infection caused by bacteria. This medication, however, has some side effects that may contribute in Lars's behavior, such as causing hallucinations, but it was quite unlikely due to the low dosage Lars took. Lars's heritage also had no evidence of mental illness, and he was never diagnosed with one, and the possibility of him having an episode of some sort can also be dismissed. Let's then talk about the possibility of Lars being tracked by someone. Some people may think that he could be fearing the people who beat him up previously coming back to track him. However, this doesn't seem to be the case, as Lars seemed to be fully aware of his surroundings and was functioning perfectly. I really don't think there would be a need for such a complicated scheme for just an argument at a bar. More plausible theories states that Lars and his friends came to vacation in Varna to party and take drugs. The area is well known for tourists to come and partake in such activities, and it is known that sometimes these people will have bad trips. Usually, the ones who do will be closely followed by the local mafia and will threaten to be killed if they do not offer them all their money. Lars may have had a bad trip after taking some drugs. He might have had some sort of connections to the local mafia and that they wanted him. This could be the root of his paranoia, which also makes sense of why he ran out the airport so quickly. In my opinion, this is the most believable theory that could have been as to what happened to Lars before he disappeared. So where is he now? Throughout the years, there have been many potential hints and tips, but they all turned out to be people who looked like Lars. In 2016, a photo of a man was sent to Sandra which was thought to be of Lars. However, it was determined that the man was a Canadian, and he only went missing in 2012 voluntarily after committing armed robbery. In 2020, a homeless man was found in Germany that had striking resemblance to Lars. However, his identity would not match again, and so the Lars Mittank case is still a mystery. After 7 years, we still do not know what truly happened to Lars after he disappeared. Whether or not he is alive, only he knows himself. And all we are left with is a mother who is desperately waiting for the return of her son. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like this type of content, and I will see you again in the next video.